My name is Vanessa. I'm 24 years old now. But this happened a few years ago, and even today I can't hear the sound of breaking glass without being pulled right back to that afternoon. Most people would probably say it was just a broken painting. It wasn't. It was the moment my family stopped talking to each other, the way we used to. It was the beginning of a truth none of us wanted to admit. Growing up, it was always just my mom, my younger sister Julie, and me living together in our old two-story house. It wasn't a huge house, or anything fancy, but it was home. Every room had something my mom had painted hanging on the walls. Landscapes, lakes at sunrise, snowy mountains, quiet forests. Painting wasn't just something she enjoyed. It was how she expressed herself. It was also how she earned extra income. People around town knew her work. Some bought paintings because they liked them. Others ordered custom pieces for anniversaries, birthdays, or gifts. Whenever she finished a painting, she'd smile the way some people smile after accomplishing something they've worked toward for months. "I think this one's special," she'd always say. That week, she'd been working on what she kept calling her most important commission of the year. The client wasn't just another customer. He had purchased several paintings before, and had recommended her work to other people. Mom appreciated loyal customers, and she wanted this painting to be perfect. She spent nearly 2 weeks on it. Every morning, she'd stand in front of the canvas, with coffee in one hand, and a paintbrush in the other. Julie and I learned not to interrupt her while she worked. When she finally finished, it was beautiful. It showed a quiet lake surrounded by pine trees, just as the sun was rising. The colors almost looked real. "I think this might be my best one yet," Mom said proudly. Julie leaned closer. "It almost looks like a photograph." Mom laughed. "That's exactly what I was hoping." The next morning she carefully placed the painting inside a large glass frame. She cleaned every fingerprint from the glass before carrying it upstairs to her bedroom. She set it carefully on the table beside her window. "I'll package it after dinner," she said. "I don't want anything happening to it before then." None of us imagined something would happen only a few hours later. That afternoon felt completely ordinary. Mom went downstairs to start cooking. The smell of onions and garlic drifted through the house. Julie was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. I looked upstairs and remembered Mom mentioning earlier that she hadn't had time to clean her bedroom, because she'd been so focused on finishing the painting. "I'll clean the downstairs," I said. "Julie, could you clean Mom's room while she's cooking?" Julie looked up. "Seriously? It'll take 15 minutes. She sighed dramatically. "You owe me." "I know," she laughed. "You always volunteer me for things." "I'm volunteering myself too." She rolled her eyes, stood up, and headed upstairs. Neither of us thought twice about it. I grabbed the vacuum and started cleaning the living room. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps upstairs. Closet doors opening. Furniture moving slightly. Everything sounded normal. Then I heard it. Crash. Glass exploding across hardwood. Sound echoed through the entire house. My heart dropped. Mom stopped cooking immediately. "What was that?" Before either of us answered, she was already running upstairs. I followed right behind her. Julie was frozen in the middle of Mom's bedroom. The frame lay shattered across the floor. Tiny pieces of glass were everywhere. The painting had fallen face first. One corner of the canvas had torn where broken glass had sliced through it. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Mom stared at it. Julie looked like she was about to cry. Finally, Mom whispered, almost to herself, "No." Julie swallowed hard. "Mom?" Mom slowly turned toward her. "What happened?" Julie was already shaking. I accidentally bumped the table while I was dusting." Mom looked back at the ruined painting. "You dropped it?" "I'm sorry. You knew how important this was." "I know. I spent weeks on that painting." "I didn't mean to." Mom's voice became louder. "Do you have any idea how much work went into this?" Tears rolled down Julie's face. "I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't repair a canvas." "I know. It was for Mr. Harrison. He trusted me to deliver this tomorrow." "I know." Mom wasn't yelling just because it was expensive. She was devastated. To her, it wasn't just paint. It represented hours of patience, creativity, and a promise she'd made to someone who believed in her work. Julie burst into tears. "I said, I'm sorry." Then she ran. Her bedroom door slammed hard enough to shake the hallway. The house became painfully quiet. Mom stood there staring at the damaged painting. She looked exhausted, more than angry. I quietly knelt beside the frame. "I'll clean this up." She nodded without looking at me. "I need a minute." I knew Julie was upset. I also knew Mom wasn't angry, because she hated Julie. She was heartbroken. There was a difference. After cleaning the broken glass, I walked down the hallway to Julie's room. Her door was locked. I knocked gently. "Julie?" "Nothing. It's me." Silence. "I know you're upset." Still nothing. I leaned against the door. "Come on, open the door." A few seconds later, I heard her crying. "I don't want to talk." "I do." "No." "Julie, it's all ruined." "I know. Mom hates me." "She doesn't hate you." "You heard her." "I did." "She'll never forgive me." I sighed. "Julie, Mom was angry because the painting mattered to her. I destroyed it. It was an accident." Another long silence. I spoke more softly. "Please open the door." Eventually, I heard the lock click. She opened the door just enough for me to walk inside. Her eyes were red. Mascara had smeared across her cheeks. I sat beside her on the bed. For a while, neither of us said anything. Finally, I put my hand on her shoulder. "Small mistakes happen." She didn't answer. "Mom's upset because of the painting, not because of you." Julie stared at the floor. "I ruined everything." "No. I did. You didn't wake up planning to break it." "I still broke it." "I know. We'll figure something out." She suddenly pulled away from me. "No, we won't." Her voice had changed. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was anger. She looked directly at me. "This is your fault." I blinked. "What?" "If you hadn't told me to clean her room, I wouldn't have been in there." I stared at her. "Julie?" "No. You asked me to do it." "I asked because I was cleaning the rest of the house." "You always tell me what to do." "I wasn't ordering you. You act like you know better than everyone." "I was trying to help Mom. And now I'm the one who gets yelled at." "Julie! If you had cleaned the room yourself, none of this would have happened." I felt something tighten in my chest. I never wanted this to happen. But it did. I couldn't have known. You never have to deal with the consequences. That's not fair. It is. She stood up. Whenever something goes wrong, somehow I'm always the one getting blamed. I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind her that she'd accidentally knocked the table over herself. But looking at her, I realized she wasn't really talking about the painting anymore. She was talking about something much deeper. Something that had apparently been building inside her for a long time. "I only wanted to help," I said quietly. She crossed her arms. "You always say that." I didn't know how to answer. After a few more seconds, I stood up. "I'll let you calm down." She didn't stop me. She didn't even look at me. I walked out of her room feeling more confused than hurt. Because Julie's reaction didn't match what had just happened. Breaking the painting had been an accident. Blaming me felt personal. Sai reached the stairs. I glanced back toward her closed bedroom door. For the first time in my life, I wondered if my little sister had been carrying resentment toward me for much longer than either of us had realized. And I had no idea that the broken painting was only the first crack in a family secret that was about to change the way I saw both my mother And my sister, forever. The hallway felt strangely quiet after I walked away from Julie's room. Normally, one of us would have gone back a few minutes later to apologize. We'd cool off, laugh about something stupid, and move on. That didn't happen. I went downstairs expecting Mom to still be cleaning up what was left of the painting. But instead I found her sitting at the kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she'd never actually taken a sip from. She looked exhausted. Not angry anymore. Just defeated. She glanced up when I walked in. "Is Julie okay?" I hesitated. "She's still upset." Mom nodded without saying anything else. For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Finally, I asked, "Are you angry because the painting is ruined, or because of something else?" She looked at me for a long time before answering. "I don't know anymore." That answer stayed with me. It didn't make sense then, but it would later. The next morning, the house felt completely different. Julie barely came out of her room. Mom quietly called her client to explain that there had been an accident, and she would need more time. I overheard only part of the conversation. "I'm so sorry. Yes, I understand. I'll make it right." When she hung up, she looked relieved. "The client was kinder than I expected," she said. "They're giving me another week." I thought that would help. Instead, Julie seemed to feel even worse. She avoided looking at Mom. She barely looked at me either. Over the next few days, something became impossible to ignore. Julie wasn't just embarrassed about the painting. She seemed terrified every time Mom praised me for something. If I finished the dishes, Julie went quiet. If Mom thanked me for grocery shopping, Julie left the room. If I solved a small problem around the house, Julie looked like she'd lost another invisible battle. At first I thought I was imagining it. Then one evening, I found Julie sitting alone on the back porch. I walked outside carefully. "Mind if I sit?" She shrugged. I sat beside her. For several minutes we listened to the crickets. Finally I said, "I miss talking to you." "So do I." "Then let's fix this." She smiled sadly. "I don't know how." "You still think I wanted the painting to break?" "No." "Then why are you still angry with me?" She looked down at her hands. "I'm not angry because of the painting." I figured. "It's just..." She stopped. "I've spent years feeling like I come second." I frowned. "Second to who?" "You." The words hit harder than I expected. "What are you talking about?" "You never noticed?" I honestly didn't. She laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "Mom always tells people how responsible you are." I started to interrupt. She shook her head. "She talks about how organized you are, how dependable you are, how much you help." "Julie." "When people visit, she shows them your college pictures." I stared at her. "I never asked for that." "I know." She wiped away a tear. "That's what makes me feel guilty." I stayed quiet. "I know you've never tried to compete with me. So why didn't you tell me you felt like this?" "Because I knew it wasn't your fault." She looked toward the house. "But every time Mom compared us, even if she didn't mean to, it felt like I could never measure up." Pieces of the last few years suddenly began fitting together. Mom had never intended to hurt Julie. But intentions weren't the same as impact. Later that night, I decided to talk to Mom privately. I found her back in her art room, carefully repairing the damaged canvas. She looked tired. "Can we talk?" She nodded. I sat beside her. "Julie thinks you've always compared us." Mom looked genuinely confused. "I haven't. I believe you. I've always loved you both." "I know. Then why would she think that?" I took a slow breath. "Because sometimes love doesn't sound the way we think it does." Mom put the brush down. I gently explained everything Julie had told me. The praise. The comparisons. The feeling of never being enough. Mom covered her mouth with one hand. "Oh." She looked like someone had just translated a language she'd been hearing incorrectly for years. I never meant. I know. I thought I was encouraging both of you. I think Julie heard something different. Mom began crying quietly. I've spent years trying to build both of you up. I know. And somehow, I've been tearing one of you down. That conversation changed everything. Not overnight. But it started something. The following evening, Mom asked both of us to sit together in the living room. None of us looked comfortable. She took a deep breath. I owe both of you an apology. Julie looked surprised. So do I, Mom continued. I've been thinking about what Vanessa told me. She turned toward Julie. I never realized my words made you feel like you lived in your sister's shadow. Julie immediately looked down. I didn't mean to make you cry the other day, Mom said softly. I was devastated about the painting. I know, Julie whispered, but I should never have let my disappointment become something that made you question your place in this family. Julie started crying again. Mom reached over carefully. You are not loved less. You always sounded so proud of Vanessa. I am, Mom smiled through tears. And I'm just as proud of you. Julie shook her head. It never felt that way. I know now. Mom's voice broke. And I'm so sorry it took a broken painting for me to finally hear what you've been trying to say without words. The room became very quiet. Finally I spoke. I owe you an apology too. Julie looked at me. I should have noticed you were hurting. You couldn't have known. I still wish I had. I blamed you because you were safe to blame. She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. You've always been the person who tried to fix everything. I can't fix everything. I know. She reached over and hugged me. I'm sorry I pushed you. I'm sorry you felt alone. We stayed like that for a long moment. A week later, Mom finished restoring the painting. It wasn't perfect. If you looked closely, you could still see the repaired corner. Mom considered starting over. Instead, she smiled. I think I'll leave it. Really? I asked. She nodded. It reminds me that beautiful things can survive mistakes. Her client accepted the painting anyway. He noticed the repair. Mom told him the truth. Instead of being upset, he smiled. Then this painting has a story. He bought it anyway. Months passed. The atmosphere inside our house slowly changed. Mom became much more intentional about how she spoke to both of us. Instead of comparing us, she celebrated us differently. Julie started believing compliments, instead of questioning them. And I stopped assuming silence meant everything was okay. Looking back now, I realize the painting was never the real problem. The shattered glass simply forced us to look at cracks that had been spreading through our family for years without anyone acknowledging them. Julie didn't explode because of one accident. She exploded because years of quiet insecurity finally found a moment to escape. Mom wasn't a bad mother. She was a loving mother who didn't realize that even well-meant words can be heard differently by different children. And I wasn't the perfect older sister. I was so focused on helping everyone that I missed the fact that the person closest to me had been quietly hurting. Sometimes families don't fall apart because of one huge betrayal. Sometimes they drift apart because of hundreds of tiny misunderstandings that no one ever talks about. Our broken painting forced us to finally have those conversations. It also taught me something I'll never forget. When someone reacts far more strongly than a situation seems to deserve, there's often an older wound underneath. If you only focus on the broken glass, you'll miss the broken heart. Years later, whenever Julie comes over to visit, we still joke about who has to dust the shelves. She laughs and points at me. You're cleaning the room. I laugh back. Deal. Neither of us ever says it out loud, but we both know why. Because some memories never completely disappear. The difference is that now they remind us how close we came to letting one accident define our family, and how choosing to finally listen to one another was what truly put us back together. A few months after everything settled down, Mom invited Julie and me upstairs. She was standing in her art room, with a soft smile on her face. "I need your opinions," she said. Against one wall were 3 blank canvases. "What are these for?" I asked. Mom looked at both of us before answering. "I've spent years painting places. I think it's time I started painting memories." Julie smiled. "What kind of memories?" "The ones that matter." Over the next few weeks, the 3 of us spent more time together than we had in years. Mom would sketch while asking us questions we'd somehow never talked about before. "What was your favorite vacation? What scared you the most when you were little? When did you feel happiest?" Sometimes we'd laugh until our stomachs hurt. Other times we'd end up crying over stories we'd each remembered differently. For the first time, none of us assumed the others already knew how we felt. We actually talked. One afternoon, Mom unveiled the finished painting. It wasn't a mountain or a lake this time. It was our old 2-story house at sunset. The porch light was glowing. The front yard looked exactly the way it had when we were kids. Through the front window, you could just make out 3 figures sitting together in the living room. It wasn't detailed enough to see our faces. But somehow, I knew it was us. Julie walked closer and whispered, "It's beautiful." Mom nodded. "It isn't perfect." None of us said anything. We all knew why those words mattered. She turned the canvas around. On the back, she'd written a single sentence. "The strongest families aren't the ones that never break. They're the ones willing to repair what they almost lost." Julie quietly slipped her hand into mine. "I'm really glad you knocked on my door that day." I squeezed her hand back. "I'm glad you opened it." She laughed. Eventually, Mom joined us, wrapping an arm around each of us. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. We didn't need to. Sometimes the happiest endings aren't about pretending nothing ever happened. They're about looking at the cracks together, and realizing they no longer divide you. Even now, whenever I hear glass break, my heart still skips for a second. Then I remember what came after. Not the argument, not the tears, but the conversations we should have had years earlier. The broken painting couldn't be restored exactly as it had been. Neither could our family. What we became instead was something stronger, more honest, more understanding, and finally willing to see one another for who we really were. And if you ask me today what the most valuable thing my mother ever created was, I won't mention the painting she sold to her client. I'll tell you, it was the home we rebuilt together after it broke.